ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So here Lord Kapila is further describing the precarious condition of the living entity within the womb of the mother, which signifies the miseries of birth in this material existence. So here he is saying, Ulbena samvritas tasmin. The embryo, the living entity who has now become like a small embryo, he has developed consciousness, and very soon he will come out of the womb of the mother. Such a child, what is the placement in the womb of the mother? How is he placed? So in the womb of the mother, Ulbena means there is a covering, amnion it is called in science. It is a kind of a membrane which covers the child. The function is described as it gives protection to the child. The Lord arranges the living entity in this material world in such a way that the living entity, he is provided with all necessary paraphernalia required to take birth, required to exist in this material world. And if he is intelligent enough to utilize all the different paraphernalia to come out of this material existence itself. Just like Prabhupada sometimes used to say, how nature arranges everything. The moment the child is born, his food is also there. When the child is not yet born, he is inside the womb of the mother, the food is still there. In a different way. In the womb of the mother, the child is connected through the umbilical cord to the mother. And whatever the mother is eating, mother supplies to the child through that connection that we saw in the previous verses. And that is why we were seeing the Vedic literature informs us that there are certain rules and regulations a pregnant mother has to follow. Because if she does not follow, the child has to suffer more. Already he is placed in a suffering. And if she does not take care of what she eats, where she goes, how she goes, then the child has to suffer more. So the Lord has made this arrangement that even within the womb, the food for the living entity is supplied. Actually, the real supplier is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, supplying through the agency of Mother. Arrangement is made by that Supreme Lord. That is why in the Upanishads it is said, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko va Vidadhati Bahudhati Vidadhati Kaman. All the necessities of all living entities are supplied by that one Supreme Personality of Godhead. You see? So, we can see here that even though the Supreme Lord supplies all the necessity of the living entity, even within the womb, the Lord has also made an arrangement wherein the living entity undergoes a terrible suffering so that the living entity can gradually come to his senses and start understanding what it is to be independent of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada's that example is very, very interesting to understand. Prabhupada's son wanted to touch that fan, and the friend advised that because this child is bent upon that I want to touch this fan, running fan. So friend advised, switch off the fan or put it low. So it will not hurt the child in a way that the child's finger will be cut off, but still it will give him an experience wherein he would not like to touch it once again. So the Lord has to carefully arrange both these things. He does not want the living entity to suffer, but at the same time he wants a lesson for the living entity. The living entity should learn a lesson. What it is to be independent of the Supreme Lord. So, here we can find Prabhupada is explaining. These are all the different arrangements of the Supreme Lord. That the living entity is placed in the amnion, a kind of a membrane in the womb of the mother, which is protective in nature. It is filled with amnion fluid, a kind of liquid. There is very less solid in that. This fluid gives a cushion to the fetus, to the child, to that embryo, so that even external injuries, it may safeguard to certain extent. So the Lord arranges in such a way that this amniotic fluid acts as a protective agency, and at the same time it is miserable. Imagine, Prabhupada is giving the example, if you put a grown-up man in this kind of condition, put up a man in this kind of condition, surround him with sack where he can hardly move his legs and hands. And then there are different kinds of, his skin is bitten by different kinds of insects. He cannot live even for a moment. It will be horrible. Practically, he cannot live even for a moment. Sometimes we find this Asuric civilization, they give such kind of pain to certain living entities like this. In order to save on their fuel, when they want to send the livestock, cows or buffaloes, they pack them practically like this in a box. Practically, very hardly they are just able to get their breathing. They cannot move their legs or hands properly. And they have reasons for this, that if they do like this, then their fat grows, some kind of. And that is what they are thinking about. Imagine with such a horrible pain given to the living entity, these people fail to understand that consciousness of fear is placed even in that body. And a person who is eating, actually he will be affected by all that pains and pleasure the living entity has undergone. It's a very subtle understanding. They cannot understand this. So, this kind of horrible condition, Prabhupada says, we have experienced before our birth in this material world. But by the arrangement of the Lord, Maya, through the agency of Maya, we forget this. Because factually we have come to enjoy in this material world, and the Lord also wants to give you facility to enjoy. And imagine if this facility was not available, that you can forget your past pain. It is very difficult. Every moment, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of painful situations we undergo. Correct? Every day. You can count. This devotee gave me trouble, this person called me like this happened like this, food was not proper, or this, or my health. Hundreds of such things. And imagine if all of that you were to remember, what miserable life you would be living. Isn't it? It will be a very miserable life. There are certain things we don't forget. That gives us so much pain. Somebody hurt us very badly. We had a very bad experience. For years, we don't forget such kind of pains. Imagine, one or two incident itself gives us so much pain. And if the Lord had not made this arrangement, how difficult it would have been. That is why for the Vaishnavas it is advised, forgive and forget. Don't remember. What is this? We have undergone miserable conditions of life in this material existence from time immemorial. And different people become the instrument for giving us pain by the arrangement of Maya. So if we have to become enemy of everyone, how it is possible to live? Isn't it? So Vaishnavas, with understanding that actually these are all my own creations, they're all my own creations. So we see the example of in Parikshit Maharaj, that incident where Parikshit Maharaj saw that Kali Purusha beating the bull, and he tried to ask him many times, who is responsible for this condition? And because the bull was actually Dharma, it is answering that no one is such responsible. Not that this person is responsible. Isn't it? Every living entity is responsible for its own suffering. So, in that sense, a devotee does not become so much agitated by pains and pleasures of this material world, understanding that different things are acting only as an instrument to give me pain. So, devotee takes those painful situations as an arrangement of the Supreme Lord, that actually it is an impetus for me not to become attached to this material world. Can you imagine? Actually, this is how a devotee should think. Parikshit Maharaj thought like this. He is saying that my dear Lord has come in the form of a curse of this Brahmana. He is saying that this curse of the Brahmana is nothing. Otherwise, Parikshit Maharaj could have thought, he has not given me protection. We saw the Lord was so protective. The Lord entered into the womb of Uttara to give protection to Parikshit Maharaj. Will he not give him protection? So Parikshit Maharaj is realizing that actually this is also protection. Why it is protection? I had become too attached to my household life. I had taken my life for granted. Life will go on like this. Isn't it? So he is saying that, my dear Lord, very, very mercifully you have come in the form of curse of the Brahmana. And you can see the result, phalena parichyate. By the result you can see. The Lord arranged continuously 7 days, such a great personality like Shukdev Goswami, to instruct Parikshit Maharaj. You see, is this not a protection? Is only the protection of the body the real protection? That is what we should think about. This is our conception of protection. Body should be protected, this should be protected, my house should be protected, children should be protected. Isn't it? From the real viewpoint of the Lord, devotional service of the living entity should be protected. That is real protection. And of course, whenever it is required, the Lord protects. And it is up to the Lord. That's why Srila Prabhupada even when the devotees were requesting Srila Prabhupada, we want you to stay back. Can we pray to the Lord? So Prabhupada said, yes, you can pray to the Lord, but pray, my dear Lord, if you so desire. If you desire, if it is desire of the Lord. Devotee is not thinking that Lord has to protect this body. Isn't it? So the real meaning of surrender is that actually the devotee surrendered to the will of the Lord. Will of the Lord. And Bhishma Pitama explains it is inexplicable. Cannot explain the will of the Lord. Very difficult to understand the will of the Lord. Great personality may become bewildered. Yudhishthir Maharaj became bewildered. So much so that the Lord had to arrange. He was completely depressed after the war, that I have become the cause of killing so many people. Krishna himself tried to preach to him, could not come out of the depression. And then the Lord arranged him to be preached by Bhishma. Isn't it? So there Bhishma explains that you should think Dharma personified is with you. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Father of Dharma is with you. And you are all truthful devotees of the Lord, dear devotees of the Lord. You are protected by Brahmanas. You are following the instructions of great personalities like Brahmanas. Isn't it? And still if there are reversals in your life, then you should understand it is the will of the Lord. Isn't it? So devotee should not get carried away. I am chanting, I am doing this in spite of that. In spite of that means it is the will of the Lord. He has something which we cannot understand at present. Just like the child, sometimes we find he cannot understand something the parents want to do for the good of the child. He cannot understand. He is thinking why they are acting against my will. I want to do like this and they are doing like this. But over a period of time he may understand that the parents are not, they are always thinking about the welfare of their child. They are not enemy of the child. Isn't it? Similarly, the Supreme Personality of God, especially for the devotees, how will He not give protection? He is giving protection even to a small ant. He is giving protection even to the child within the womb. Isn't it? So will He not give protection to one who is surrendered to Him? So we should think like that, understand. So Prabhupada is explaining here that by the will of the Lord, through the agency of Maya, we forget this. So the Maya, it acts in two different ways. This Shakti covering potency is called Avarnatmika. So for those living entities who want to perpetually enjoy in this material world, the Lord covers them more and more thickly with Avarnatmika Shakti. That yes, be fool, get befooled by Maya, take even sufferings as happiness. Just struggle in this material world trying to remove one suffering from another and consider that as happiness. This is Avarnatmika Shakti of the Lord. But the devotees of the Lord, they can get knowledge from the scriptures. That yes, I may have forgotten the miseries of the birth. But I can read in Srimad Bhagavatam that birth is miserable, isn't it? And certain kinds of, just like we see the example, Prabhupada gives that example. When the mother becomes pregnant and gives birth to the child, the kind of suffering she undergoes, she says, I will never become mother again. But we don't find that she, isn't it? Similarly, there is another example Prabhupada gives. Somebody addicted to sex life sometimes suffers horrible diseases, and then he thinks miserable, and then he's thinking, I will give it up. But once it is little cured, once again he indulges in that. This is called Avarnatmika Shakti, covering potency of Maya. So, very difficult to overcome. The covering potency is so thick, people don't even realize that actually they are suffering. Prabhupada gives that example that pig does not realize he is living in a miserable condition. Ass does not realize that actually he is suffering under that washerman. They don't realize. So, it requires sharp intelligence to understand the miserable condition of this one. People take it for granted. क्या है? जन्म लेते हैं, मरना तो है, सबको मरना है. Isn't it? They just take it for granted. So, Prabhupada is saying this, that actually, unfortunately, we forget all these sufferings and try to be happy in this life, not caring for the liberation of the soul from the entanglement of birth and death. So we become so busy in trying to mitigate the temporary sufferings. You can go and ask people. You can take an interview. What is the problem you are facing? You'll only find some temporary problems people are struggling with. Not having so much of wealth, I want a little bit more. Isn't it? My child is not studying properly. You can, if you go to the temples, what people pray for, you can ask them. Anybody is praying, my dear Lord, make me liberated from this ocean of birth and death. Hardly you will find. Different desires, you will find some temples, well known for, if your desire gets fulfilled, you can tie one thread there. Hundreds and thousands of thread. Sometimes in Vrindavan also you will find, in Raman Reti, something like that. I heard that people, they make, with that Reti they make their house, that if you can make your good house here, you will get a very good house. Can you imagine? This is what people are thinking, if I get some good house, good wealth, all these things, that will solve my problem. So none of these people are aware that actually these are not real miseries of life. Isn't it? Birth, old age, death, disease, nobody takes them seriously. This is Avarnatmika Shakti of the Lord. So we should be very, very thankful to the books of Srila Prabhupada. They are like the sword which Prabhupada says, the saintly people, in terms of cutting off Maya, they are merciless. The words they speak acts like a sword which can cut off the ropes of Maya, entanglement of the living entity in this material world, our ignorance. And actually we can see how all of us, our whole perception to the world has changed just by hearing the words of Srila Prabhupada. isn't it? So if you want to make people awaken to this reality, Prabhupada is saying here, you see, it is an unfortunate civilization in which these matters are not plainly discussed. Where do you find? Any university you find? One subject, birth, old age, disease and death, miseries of life. Let us discuss this subject. For one tooth, there are MDs done just to take care of tooth. Become a dentist, doctor, varieties in that you can find. You know. So many subject matter people are studying. Nowhere practically you'll find anyone interested in understanding miseries of birth, death, old age, disease. And Bhagavatam is describing, Lord Kapila is describing all these things. So Prabhupada is saying, very unfortunate. First of all, Maya's potency is to cover. And these different kinds of inventions which are being done to make the life comfortable, and a person becomes busy with Maya, where is the question? He will even think about birth, old age, disease and death. Isn't it? It is just like goat becomes busy in chewing, thinking that there is no death. The cat, it closes its eyes to the reality and thinks the danger is gone. So this is Prabhupada used to say, it is a soul-killing civilization. So first of all, we have come to this material world to enjoy, very difficult. The covering potency of Maya is so huge, and over and above all these things what we find, so much more grossly all our senses can be indulged, that no one has time to even consider or even think about this subject matter at all. Isn't it? One after another. I was just like, short videos you will find in the YouTube. That, what is it called? Small videos. One after another. You keep on going. This is called influence of Maya. Maya will keep you so busy, no time. No time for all these things. So, at least we devotees, Prabhupada is saying here, this is an unfortunate civilization. We should be discussing all these things, and we should be educating people also about all these things. So all of you should read thoroughly. Very important. Don't simply just bypass all these things. You should see how the living entity suffers. How he is covered by, from outside by intestine, inside by this membrane of the mother, and he is placed in one corner of the abdomen. And then when the time comes for taking birth, so like this he will be in miserable condition for 8-9 months. And then when the time comes for his birth, the air within the womb of the mother will push the child downward with his head. Here it is said he is like a bow. His neck is like this towards his abdomen, towards his stomach. And the legs are towards his head. You would have seen, all of you would have seen. Those who are grahasthas, at least they would have seen when we go and take x-rays, how the fetus is developing day by day. Isn't it? You can find. There was no such x-rays at that time, but all these things are there in the scriptures. How the child is like a bow and cannot move there's not much freedom. Isn't it? So we'll stop with this Granth Raj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai.